to play?
What?
What do we want to play?
Well, I'd love to hear some regional stuff.
Regional stuff, you mean southern stuff?
Southern stuff. Like stuff from Columbus. Or
Cumbus.
Lyons.
We say Cumbus.
How do you say that? How do you say it?
Cumbus.
Cumbus?
Mm-hmm.
You're from Cumbus? Okay. And how do you say dog in Cumbus?
Dog. So on.
That's Cumbus?
Some Cumbus.
Did you learn any stuff from people that lived in your house when you were growing up?
Not really, because I play mainly black music, so I learn most of what I know from black musicians. I play mainly blues and real old southern stuff. So mainly what I know is just black. I know a few white tunes.
No, but I meant you had black people working in your house.
Yeah, the only black musician I knew as a kid was one out of the country at our farm who could play. But I was so young at the time, all I remember is that he could play, you know. So, but I listened to old records mainly.
Are there any musicians in town that you go to?
Yeah, oh yeah. Tomorrow night I'm going. Or Wednesday night.
What's that?
I'm taking a bunch down to the boat, but I go different places, different time. We got a great old black woman blues player here named Precious Brown.
What's her name?
Precious Brown.
Precious Brown.
Great. She has no teeth, no hair, no running water, no lights, no money, no car, no job, no
That's great.
nothing.
That's great.
And she travels around and plays, and she's good too.
Plays the guitar?
Plays the guitar and sings. She's made 3 or 4 records. She's good.
Would she be good if she had a place to live? Or a job?
Well, you know, not a job, because all she does is just take the money and spend it on whiskey. That's all she does. She just lives on whiskey. So, but you know, she hawks a guitar, and it's just hopeless. You know, if you give her teeth, she has no teeth. So if you take her and get her teeth, she'll just hawk the teeth.
Have you done that?
Everybody's done that. Fred's done it 20 times.
How does she feel about all these white guys being so interested in her music?
She likes it because she gets beer and whiskey from us. She's pretty good. Huh?
Know any of her songs?
We played some of the same stuff. Her songs are all dirty.
Like what?
Black Rat.
Black crap?
Black Rat.
Black rap.
Too tight. In fact, they're so dirty that she really can't play them for white audiences. And she'll do it when she gets drunk. But,
Why can't you play for white audiences?
well, she thinks that well, it does shock them. Usually they don't know what she's saying. I mean, usually they don't know what she means.
Because it's slang for body parts in black.
Oh, yeah.
Black slang.
Yeah, oh sure. And you know, they're party songs is what they are. But of course she doesn't get invited much to play for parties. For white people, they want her in a kind of folk setting, so she has to,
Sick.
Yeah, she has to do the folk number, you know, get up there and somebody right in front of her will have done Scarborough Fair or some goddamn thing, and she has to get up and do, you know, Black Rat and
Black wrath.
Rat.
Rat.
Yes.
Black rat.
But she's good.
Who was that woman? Patti Smith?
What about her?
Black blues singer. She died in a car accident.
Bessie Smith.
Bessie Smith.
You know, this is Ma Rainey's hometown. Greatest,
Really?
I think the greatest female blues singer of all time is from right here. She taught Bessie Smith.
Which part of town did she grow up in?
Right over there. Her house is still there.
Do they have a little plaque that says this is Ma Rainey's house? That was nice of them. Did you do something to do with that?
And that was done before I got here. In fact, I don't know how that got done. It fascinates me. They have no idea, of course, what she sang. Have no idea what her music was like. Her music was really rough, down-home, explicit blues. Very explicit.
What does explicit blues mean?
Well, it's all sexual innuendo. Which is how you sold a race record. All of her stuff was race records. Made and issued on the Paramount race series.
Because white ladies didn't talk like that?
Sure. I don't even know what you're talking about. What you talking about? Well, they didn't even have those body parts.
Can you sing one of her songs?
I could, but not until I have half a bottle of whiskey. She hates you when I play the guitar. Don't you, Mags? There's an old Bessie Smith one. I know one of Pete Seeger's maids songs.
One of his maid songs?
I haven't played it in so many years.
What do you mean his maid?
Elizabeth Cotton.
This is a maid that was in his house when he was growing up?
Elizabeth Cotton. Isn't that right, Pete?
Elizabeth Cotton? That was her name. Where did he grow up?
I don't know where he grew up.
But he had a black maid. So Pete Seeger had a big influence on you?
Yeah. On everybody in my generation. It's gonna take me a while to figure this out. I haven't done this for 40 years. Okay. Remembering this as I go along. Something like that. I played that since I was a child. Something like that.
Pretty.
It's called Spanish flang dang.
Spanish
Flang dang.
flang dang.
Or sometimes Spanish fandango.
I've heard fandango.
It's based on a real pretty piece called Romanza in the classical repertoire, and you can hear the similarities when you. But she apparently put it together. All of the many versions of it. There's one here in Columbus that Chet Atkins does. It's quite different. Chet Atkins grew up here. There's a white version in 2/4 time, which of course means it's not a tango, so it sounds different. Sounds white. Sounds real white.
What did Chet Atkins' family do here?
His father was a music teacher, and Chet grew up in a suburb north of here by the way of textile workers, and
What, the suburb was of textile workers?
it's really a little town called Mountain City or Mountain View. He grew up very poor. I don't mean he didn't grow up, he wasn't dirt poor, but he didn't have any money. His daddy went around to different stores and taught music and
Two kids?
anybody I think, and was apparently pretty good. And Chet used to play in the choir of the Rose Hill Baptist Church here.
Did you know him?
No, played the fiddle when he was here.
Mountain View.
Something like that, Mountain View, Mountain City, I can't remember. But it was textile community, if I remember correctly.
Have you been there?
Oh yeah, it's just right out the road. Oh Christ! I got an idea of how I'm gonna get rich.
Oh,
Seeger, I know how we can get rich.
okay. This is your message.
This is my message. We get us a Japanese chip, see, and we put it in the headboard of all these damn guitars and banjos and all this stuff that go out of tune all the time. And we sync it to 440 kilocycles, and it keeps the guitar and the band, it keeps the guitar anyway in perfect tune. You never go out of tune. You'll never have to tune your strings. Eventually we can take the tuning knobs off altogether. All you need is a pair of new strings when they give out, that's all. Now, if you can get somebody to finance that, I'll go along with you.
He doesn't know who you are.
I used to know your old buddy Ernie Mars in Atlanta. We used to sit around all the time playing Plastic Jesus together in manuals. And Buddy Moss, remember old Buddy Moss, he's dead now.
Plastic Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Can we play that now?
I can't remember Plastic Jesus. You can't play those songs if you're sober anyway.
Oh.
I don't care if it rains or freezes, as long as I got my Plastic Jesus riding on the dashboard of my car. Something like that. It's better when you're drunk.
And you can drink because you're a man.
That's right. It has to do with enzymes in the stomach, but maybe I better not go into that because I know how sensitive you women are about biological issues.
Okay, well, we got part of a message. Did you use Pete Seeger's songs in the 60s?
Oh, he had a song of his. Oh yeah, sure. I was raised on Pete Seeger songs, and made a lot of difference in my life.
How?
Well, it gave me the emotional support to do what I want to do.
Right now?
Huh?
To do what you're doing now?
Yeah, and just simply to, it gave me the emotional support for the reading I was already doing, you know. And I think it did that for a lot of people. It was the first time, I thought I was the only person in the world who was a socialist. I didn't know there were any other socialists in the world. I didn't know there was any other person in the world interested in cotton mill workers, black people, or history. Nobody I knew was interested in any of those things, and I had nobody to talk to about it all. And I had started reading as a kid, 13, 14 years old. I was reading, but I had nobody to talk to. My daddy was dead, so I had nobody to talk to about those things. You couldn't talk to people in the mills because they were not, you could to a certain extent, but you couldn't really talk politics, theory, anything like that with them, much less, socialist theory or world economics or anything like that with them, obviously. And nobody was interested in where I went to college. I went to Vanderbilt, and everybody was in pre-med or pre-law. And I went to Emory, and everybody there was in pre-med or pre-law. Nobody was really interested. So the music was the only contacts I had to live my life in. And the music that that Sega and the Weavers and all those people put together was literally the only emotional support I had for 15 to 20 years. And that's what folk music meant to me, was that I had a community. For the first time in my life, I had a community of people who actually seemed to think a little bit the way I thought.
How did you come to your thoughts to begin with?
I have no idea. Daddy, Granddaddy having worked in the mills maybe, but that's kind of far-fetched. Maybe Daddy, probably from Daddy, who was a different sort of person anyway. But he died when I was so young, I don't have any conscious memory of anything, except he did tell me the story I told George. Daddy did tell me the story of the 7 guys who were shot up at Bibb Manufacturing. I knew about that. I don't think anybody else in Columbus in my generation had ever heard anything remotely like that. And I mentioned it to many people when I came back to Columbus because it was one of the things that I thought I might research and write about. But I met with a deafening silence that I thought I was wrong. I thought, well, I just imagined that. That didn't really happen because I had lucked out on a couple of other things. Daddy was a friend of the black MD who was killed here, Dr. Brewer, the NAACP president.
Do you remember him in your house?
No, I don't. I have no memory of Dr. Brewer at all. But I knew that had happened, and so that was one thing. Then I just literally stumbled over the black child being lynched here in 1912. I literally stumbled over it. And it was as if I knew that story in detail, and I have a feeling Daddy told me that story, and maybe even grandmother told me that story, and maybe even our cook, the black woman who raised me, told me that story.
Ready.
Yeah, she may have told me that story in confidence in the kitchen or something. And
did you spend a lot of time with her?
oh yeah, all the time I could. That's where the biscuits and the rolls and the donuts and all came from. I spent all the time I could around Betty. And
She must have given you something other than food.
she did. She gave me emotional support, love, and a kind of believable context. I could believe her life. It made, I wasn't suspicious of her life because she had no reason to lie to me or try to manipulate me or manipulate other people. Or she just seemed genuine to me, and I could tell that when she said something, she was telling the truth. So she was a believable person. Most people in my family were so exotically Southern that they were not believable characters, they lived in the 1840s in their minds. They lived in the antebellum South. So, it was crazy, sort of.
Where did you live? You lived in both worlds?
Yeah, in a way. Daddy not being a Southerner, he thought the whole thing was, fried honeysuckle. He wouldn't say a word when all that business was started about the South. He just shut up. So I shut up too. And I listened. I'm glad I listened, but it was crazy. Here was it was after all the 1940s, and here we were talking about issues that had been dormant in the national consciousness since, at least the Do Nothing Party, or maybe Henry Clay's life. I mean, here were people in my family talking about Henry Clay as if he were alive. That's a little bit strange.
Do they refer to him as Henry?
Well, he was a good friend of my great-grandfather's, and they, exchanged books and all this kind of stuff. And so grandmother knew what she was talking about. I mean, they really were good friends. And, it's bizarre. I mean, other people were having conversations about neutrons and what was going on in the Manhattan Project, and whether or not we should, invade, open a second front in Europe. We were discussing where Jeb Stuart was at Gettysburg and why Longstreet should have been, in grandmother's opinion, cashiered out of the Army. That is, the Confederate Army.
Cashiered out of the Army.
Yeah, run out of the Army for mistakes he made at Gettysburg. Other people were discussing how to partition Europe in post-World War II Europe, and we were discussing the military occupation of Georgia in 1865. So, I mean, it was, during the Civil Rights Movement, of course, I would come home, and it was even crazier.
What was going on during the Civil Rights?
Well, I would come home from Atlanta or someplace.
You were married already, with kids.
At that time. And I would come home, and I had been working, maybe I'd been covering, let's say, some civil rights event when somebody had gotten beaten up or children were killed or what had happened. And I would come home to Columbus, for Christmas or whatever it was or something, and sit down. And I heard conversations at the dinner table, which were as bad or worse than anything that was being done, by the Ku Klux Klan types in the stories I was covering. I mean, you can't imagine what it's like. There was a minister who was beaten to death in Selma. I don't remember the year anymore, but he was beaten to death. And I remember I was sickened, I remember, by the experience. I mean, literally, I was sick. And I went home. I don't remember what happened.
Did you cover that story?
No, I did not. Everybody in the South was just stunned by the story. Some Klan, Ku Klux was beating him to death outside of a restaurant in Selma. And I remember my grandmother saying, "It serves him right." And the next remark was, "Pass the chicken, please." And then somebody expounded on how men of the cloth who involved themselves in the day-to-day affairs of people should, deserve to die, and particularly those who got involved in the racial question. Well, although I heard much worse than that at my table, I mean, I've heard much, much, much worse than that. For some reason, that really just nearly broke me down. And I remember going over to Selma, and I actually went and tried to find a spot where the guy had been killed.
What were you going to do?
I don't know what I was going to do, but I did find the spot, and I just stood on it for a while. But it wasn't all that kind of racial stuff and things with socio-political implications. It was just literally that they lived in the 1840s. I mean, the intellectual discussion, for example, would be, and you understand these are educated, articulate people. The intellectual discussion would be about Augusta Evan Wilson's novel St. Elmo, which I think was published in 1844 or something, 5 or something. Or it would be about Diddy Dumps and Top.
Diddy Dumps and Top.
Tops, which was an apologia for slavery, written in a sort of eulogistic fashion about life on a plantation, about how happy all the darkies were and playing the banjos and all that crap on the plantation. It includes a famous oration, which I can't quote, but which has to do with the slave who was considering committing suicide, but he decided he couldn't do it because he was owned by somebody, and it would be dishonest of him to drown himself and cheat his master out of his value. The rest of the conversation was like you were frozen in maybe the jazz age. So I got a good education for the 1920s. Mother went to school with Zelda Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife. And I mean, insofar as we had any kind of modern discussion about anything, it would be about Zelda, or they talk about Scott socially, you know, I mean, social commentary on him, you know, the way he dressed and how he was a gold digger going after Zelda and Zelda's father's money. And
so you knew about the Great Gatsby from
oh my Lord, yeah.
the inside.
And all about some scandalous event that happened when he took it to some hotel in Pensacola. I've forgotten all the stories. And of course about Carson McCullers, who was from Columbus and who didn't wear brassieres, and which was a scandalous situation in Columbus. And my mother and all the other women in Columbus I knew anything about were horrified when Carson fell off a horse at Fort Benning one time and knocked herself out, and they took her to the hospital, and the nurse or the doctor or somebody let it leak that Carson didn't have on a brassiere. Well, that was the subject of conversation in Columbus for months. Months I'm talking about.
They didn't write a letter to Carson or send her a note or do anything as a community effort to get her to put on a brassiere, did they?
They wouldn't do that because, see, they knew a mother.
Because what?
They knew a mother. See, they were socially prominent people in Columbus.
That's probably why she could get away with it. But she didn't get away with it.
Not really. Basically, Carson was run out of town. Not many people know that, but Carson McCullers who's Lula Smith here,
Lulu Smith.
basically run out of Columbus.
Why? Did she take over?
She was too unconventional. She was weird. You know, they thought of her as weird. Of course, Carson was weird, to be honest. But she was not, you know, skitsy weird. She was just she's heard a different drummer.
What'd she do?
Well, she behaved.
Do more for him than we could the girls, but it ain't because we thought more of him. It was because we had more to do with. Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm fine. Let me hear you talk a little, just so
Talk
I know if I can get you.
Talk a little bit
My
more.
voice is softer than his, so it.
Maybe you ought to put this on her jacket then.
Maybe that's a good
Yeah.
idea. And let's see how that works. You guys are used to microphones, aren't
Oh
you?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
We
We played with that Robert Saxon for years and years.
and we
He
attended
played
a
with us.
festival in Atlanta, and then we were in
Down here.
down here a couple of
You want to do
years.
that for me? Thank you. So you play the guitar?
I played most anything.
Hey, you got it. You got
Piano, organ.
it. Honey, you
bass.
got it.
Have I got it backwards?
bass records? Now then.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me hear you talk.
What'd you like?
That's good.
I come out better with it over there than I do here, don't I?
Oh, this
Is it all right now?
Oh yeah, this is gonna be fine. Okay.
Intense, almost insane way you have to be to learn to master. But I mean, she could play the instrument. She just had no repertoire. She would practice to learn, you know. but she was really good.
Did you know her?
Yeah, I knew her family too, knew her mother. I think I knew Reeves McCullers, but I was
Her brother?
no, that's who she married. But I'd been so young at the time that, I mean, when I say I knew him, all I knew was who that was. You know, when people are older than you are, that's. But everybody in my family knew all that. And she was a tormenting person, really.
Did she commit suicide?
No, she died of, her husband did, Reeves did. Hung himself to a pear tree in there behind the apartment in Paris, I think. But anyway, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think he hanged himself. And I know he did, in fact, but I've forgotten what the details were. But it was calculated to inflict as much pain on Carson, I think, as, you know. And after that, I don't think she was ever right.
Needs
But she was producing, Carson produced mature, solid work when she was 18 years old. One thing about her, she never got any better. But where she was good enough. And she got there, she was essentially a lyrical writer.
Lyrical?
Yeah, she was a very lyrical writer, instead of a political or philosophical or all that sort of stuff. But her characters are secure and straight and honest, and they hold up. The books are kind of thin, but
When you say a character's secure or straight or honest, what do you mean?
that they're real and that they have human dimensions and that they're rooted in reality and they're not some sort of concoction of an exotic mind. They're people that you could actually imagine yourself meeting. And all of Carson's people, some of whom many of whom have been described as grotesques, actually exist. Not just in her imagination. I mean, they're people who are real flesh and blood. And I think that's probably what drove her so. I mean, she had real human empathy, and she tried to work at the paper as a reporter.
At the Columbus
Edge
Legislative?
Edge Reed hired her. She said she said, "Got to be a reporter." This is what Edge said. "I got to be a reporter." So he hired her. And she's crazy to loon, and didn't want to type stories, and would get halfway through a story and get bored with it and switch to something else, and so she didn't last. But I think when Carson went to New York, she was just 17 or 18 years old. And 2 years later, she had won the National Book Award and had a play on Broadway. It was a smash hit.
What play was that?
The play was either Heart is a Lonely Hunter or All of Her Titles Are Beautiful, or Member of the Wedding. Probably Member of the Wedding was the first hit, although it wasn't the first book.
I don't know how young women do that, or young men.
I don't either.
That's the time it is
I got to eat.
Let's finish our romance. That song, you don't know that song, Continental Girl?
Sure I did.
How's it go?
I've sung that song 20 years. Worked in a cotton mill all of my life and I ain't. Worked in a cotton mill all of my life and I ain't got nothing but a barlow knife. Hard time, cotton mill girl, it's hard time. Never care something. When I die, don't you when I die, don't you bury me at all. Pickle my bones and alcohol. Pickle my bones and alcohol. Hard time. What's another verse? It's hard time, cotton mill girl, it's hard time, cotton mill girl. Hard time, cotton mill girl, hard time, mill girl. I've forgotten that song. I can't remember anymore.
You know, Nanny Mae Washburn sang that for us. She stood up and she came to the table and she sang it. Her voice just stretched as much as it possibly could stretch. She's 94 years old, so 94. It's just so interesting to hear how she took that song and stretched it down so tight.
There we are.
There we are.
Huh? We're starving to damn death.
Can I help out?
No, she's all right. She's fine. Did you win? We were all fixing. We were ready to go out. No, we're waiting for you.
So